moving to Mackay 7 years ago, I met Loren, and while I was out and about, I asked her if I could do her portrait, and she said yes. So during the process of creating the portrait, I just became to realise how much there was of her story and those of the South Sea Islander community that I knew nothing about. And it really brought forward that I wanted to do a project about this wonderful community. So this project really has come about from that one meeting, and through that I've met so many wonderful people that we all need to know what's transpired in their past, what makes them who they are today, and everything in between.
Hi, I'm Marion Healy, born Marion Vetnana. I'm a fourth generation Australian South Sea Islander here in Queensland, in Mackay. I'm a sister of many, an auntie of many, but definitely a South Sea Island community here that exists since 1863. We know under Robert Towns' history that he brought the first boatload of Vanuatus to Tweed Heads, and when he brought them here, it then gave the workforce to opening up this land. We look at from Maryborough all the way to Innes Wales and Cairns, we see the industry opening up for sugarcane. We see that the Pacific Islanders were used mainly for that trade to bring us in, and we are the left of that, or the forgotten that are left since the Federation was started with the Right Australian policy. I asked that we do some photos and records of many of the places where Australian South Sea Islander or South Sea Islander people lived.
Yep.
And where they've been.
Yep.
We started here, and the relevance to starting here at the mouth of the river, or a bit up from the mouth of the river, is the Leichhardt tree that's there. We know in history that Prima Donna, being the first boat or schooner that came in,
Yep.
brought 70 South Sea Islanders from Vanuatu. And we know that that tree not only served the purpose for the Kanakas, but it also served the purpose for white people that were coming, that were being brought up on the boats, who were going to come and be residents of Queensland or Mackay. The sugar cubes, the relevance there, have you ever looked at it?
I have.
What have you noticed on it?
All the names of the mills.
Yeah.
It started off 16, I think they said 25, but there's more than 25.
There's 39. I think there's around 36 to 39 mills.
Yeah. But you mentioned the Prima Donna. It's June the 13th,
Yep.
1867.
1867. So we know that John Mackay arrived here in 1860. So 7 years later, the first Pacific Islanders arriving here in Mackay.
There's an old fellow, Denman.
Yep.
When they had the first Mena reunion, it'd be 50 years ago.
Yeah.
He, because he was a great friend of all the Moonies, he had the receipts where his granddad came in here to the Leichhardt tree, and he bought, the mission walls along here then, eh?
Yeah.
He bought, barbed wire, and he bought two boys.
Two boys.
He bought them. Yeah. The Denman family was real helpful with the old Kanakas when they got to their too old at work age.
Yeah.
They had a old settlement there at Denman Farm, and you know where the old fig tree used to be?
Yeah.
They say that's the burial site of it.
Oh, we were frightened of that place
and
as
they
kids.
planted the tree there so that they'd never be disturbed, but the main roads had to widen the road there. And so
I see they've only just knocked that down now.
The tree's gone, yeah. He said, yeah, well, that's why they planted the tree there, because there's old graves there. And old Jimmy Goga,
Yeah.
he was the last Kanaka that I ever seen. He was living out there. And Grandad Mooney could go up and talk lingo to him.
Yeah.
And we actually seen him. I meant to bring it today. There's a story, he was in the Daily Mercury, old Daily Mercury, about Jimmy Goga was the last of them in this area. Had a pearl shell earring in his ear.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, from the island, See, all the old Kanakas, when they settled, most of them settled along river.
Yeah,
Pioneer River,
Yep.
Reliance Creek, Sandy Creek at Homebush.
Up the top there, I remember Dad and them hiding Tara up there.
and they lived on their veggies. They had great gardeners, eh?
Yeah.
When the crushing finished, they stayed on their plantation,
Yeah.
and there was Tanner men, and the Tanner men used to fight everybody. All the Vanuatu south, Solomon Islands over the other side of the river.
And that's how we lived, eh?
Yeah, and they didn't worry about, it was a taboo to marry someone from the other side
of the river.
But then it started, you know.
Yeah. We're
And,
very intermarried now, aren't we?
Yeah.
Our families are, eh?
A lot of our young people probably don't connect, but I can remember living in a house with a dirt floor, no running water, no electricity, you know, brought up like that.
Yeah. So, you know, on this sugar cube back here, eh?
Yeah.
There are the names of the mills, but on the other side there are the names of the schooner boats that brought the people.
Yep.
And then, as a part of the project, we were asked as family members in our community to put our thumbprint.
Okay.
And I know I've seen the old contracts of the for sale of the Kanakas coming in.
Yeah.
Many
of them. Thumbprint. Yeah.
Of that thumbprint, the relevance of that thumbprint.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure those thumbprints will be there long after I go.
Yeah.
You know, but I hope that our children will tell the stories.
To start off with, Rowena and her sister Irene, they were brought up on a farm just outside of, where was it, Mount Ossa?
On the other side of
just off Balnagown.
Balnagown.
Around the Balnagown area. They had a cane farm, and Uncle Bill and Auntie Ivy, that's her mum and dad, and they all worked hard on, and plus her brother Billy.
Yeah.
It was really good because when the school holidays would be on or whatever, and Auntie Ivy would say to Mum, you know, let the girls come out for a holiday. So, we just couldn't wait to get out there, you know. It was really good.
Well, that was your Auntie Ivy, which was Katie Marla's daughter.
Yeah. Now, a lot of them had a lot of South Sea Islanders have got beliefs. When the sun goes down, you don't whistle. And and another thing was, and when you're in the house, do not sweep the floors at night time. And another thing too, if people go along, I guess if you go along Bridge Road here, heading out to the hospital, just before you come to the lights, if you look at a set of flats there, they're named in honour of Rowena Trevi.
Oh.
Yeah. And the thing was that Tim Mulheron was the mayor here. And he always believed, you know, and I said, Auntie Rowie, I said, isn't that lovely? I said, your name? She said, oh, that Tim Mulheron. She said, oh, he's a bugger. And I said, why? And she said, it's just that why he put that there, he just loved people doing things for the
in return, because for the amount of
people
work
in Mackay.
For the amount of work she's done.
She used to always say, you know, like when she went to the government and everything and spoke for the people, the South Sea Island people, her saying was always, we don't need a hand out, we need a hand up.
Yeah.
They have NAIDOC days and Harmony days and all those sort of things. And Harmony Day was the one that it was really heavy on my heart to be able to express what I felt, what Harmony meant to me. The day that I went to the principal to say, coming up soon, can I do the Harmony Day? He said, yes, you can. What are you going to do? I said, Harmony? If I'm going to do this, I need a whole school to teach them that harmony means togetherness. Harmony needs to be understood by the children, that we all live in Australia. We need to be able to communicate and get on with different people. Went to the music teacher and asked her, would you be able to teach the kids We Are One? She said yes. So set that one up, set the all the instruments up on the stage with all the notes. This is how we should be. This is how, you know, it don't matter where we come from, how we come to be here. We have to be able to relate and live with each other. and I notice in some cases it's hard because the memory of how my forefathers were brought here has left a scar, but through my upbringing, my parents, different to others, never spoke about probably the hardships that people went through. Children were taken away from their families and things like that. And when we had strangers, like white people come, we were not allowed to be seen, we were told to get back in the house. I thought about this Harmony Day, we go back to that. The music teacher taught them this song about We Are One. And that was significant for me that day, that no matter where we come from, because there were Indians, there was Torres Strait, there was Aboriginal, South, it was all different cultures involved in that school, who attended that school, I should say. I could be a violin, you could be a drum, you could be a bass, whatever it is, but together, it's that togetherness that I find that this is what we need, no matter what colour, creed, what religion, is about our friendship. The past, we can't forget that, especially with how my people were brought over, stolen. And I just feel that this harmony, this how we relate, how I relate to you, how you relate to me, something that's not harsh, something that's not out of tune, but something that we can walk together. There may be people that, disregard who you are, but they have that problem, you don't, we don't. And it's how we are trained within us to be able to relate to other people. My father trained us to always have respect to other people. And I now been able to pass that down to my children.
Yeah.
And and I'm still here to tell my grandchildren.
Yeah.
And I have great-grandchildren who will hear, I might rouse on them, but I said, I'm not rousing on you, I'm teaching you. Yeah. And that's the difference, It's who we stand for, what we stand for. We're proud South Sea Islanders.
My name is Mullum Stone, and I am a Mackayite, 5th generation on my mum's side, who was, mum hails from an Australian South Sea Islander family from the Bakers Creek Homebush area, and my dad, as a Torres Strait Islander Malay man, came to Mackay. His family were evacuated from Thursday Island at the beginning of the Second World War, and so a lot of my dad's mum and his brothers and sisters were brought off the island during that time. As a young person, spent many years at Bakers Creek. There was a couple of places that are no longer there, but my grandmother lived at Bakers Creek, as did her brothers and sisters, and my great-grandmother also lived. So it was a really strong family community in the Bakers Creek area. That's my Australian South Sea Islander family, but there was also other Australian South Sea Islander families out there. We went to the same church, and we used to all go out to a little mission hall out at Homebush, but there's some real strong elements and life experiences that I have as part of my Australian South Sea Islander family. I was very aware of the difference between being with my Australian South Sea Islander family and being with my Torres Strait Islander family. Both of them were, I think they nurtured me as to who I am. So whilst I might identify as a Torres Strait Islander, I will acknowledge my Australian South Sea Islander heritage, because that's where half my life was basically spent and nurtured as in that culture. And I did notice the difference when I was with my Torres Strait family to my Australian South Sea Islander family. Some of those interesting little things I learned from being raised as an Australian South Sea Islander in my Australian South Sea Islander community, family out of Bakers Creek, was some of those little things like, I remember, you always had to act properly. There was this thing about, and my experience, I don't know that it's anyone else's experience, but it's always was about doing things so that you didn't appear to be uncivilized. And I think some of the terms that I recall is like, what will the neighbours think? If you weren't at school or if you weren't at work, there was pretty some strict rules about being outside, being visible, and in order not to be seen to be lazy or uneducated, you did a lot of things that made you fit with the mainstream community. To me, it's less about being less cultural and more mainstream, but just about, and I learned that those are the things that taught me to be respectful, to strive to be educated, to develop good work ethic. So I can see where those cultural things that we thought were just because our families wanted us to be more white than cultural, they're lifetime values that I feel very strongly about. And so it wasn't just about dividing, it was like those cultural stories that have bigger morals for them, bigger
My name is Philip Kemp, and I'm a descendant of the Yubira people for the Mackay area. The Yubira people were one of the clan groups that occupied this Mackay area, and primarily they were the most dominant group in the city area. There are other 4 other clan groups that have occupied this Mackay region, and but the Yubira were the most dominant, so that's where I take my connection through my maternal grandfather. My grandfather was he was the son of a white settler and a full-blooded Aboriginal woman, and so then my grandfather, because of his education, he was able to secure a really good job with a local company, J. Mitchell Moores and Sons, and worked for J. Mitchell Moores and Sons for many years. He was acknowledged and recognised as a good citizen for the Mackay area. He never forgot his roots though. He always understood that there were other people, particularly South Sea Island people, who had been brought over from Vanuatu and the Solomon Islands to work in the cane fields, and they struggled to survive. A lot of the South Sea Island people, families, they lived in shacks along the Pioneer River, and my grandfather and my grandmother, recognising or realising that they were quite privileged, their circumstances, they would take the horse and buggy and go along and visit the families along the river, and grandfather and grandmother had a good garden in their property, had lots of fruits and veggies and chickens and that, so they were able to take some of their fresh produce and distribute it to some of the families who were struggling. So they always made sure that they kept connected with the Australian South Sea Island community as well.
I'd like to just say that, make connections with your community out there if you're wanting to learn more about Australian South Sea Island people. The door's always open in our community to sit down, have a cuppa and learn about us. I know that many of us that are in our 50s and 60s, we're learning as well about our own story, but we want our stories to be told to our next generation, and that means all children, our South Sea Island kids, to their white friends, to many of those that are coming into our family as well. We need to teach them about our struggle and how we came to be here, how many of us are lifting up and living amongst the communities we're in today.